Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling someone you definitely know. I mean, he's literally on the money we use, the $100 bill guy.
Benjamin Franklin.
Exactly. But we're pushing past the face on the currency.
Okay.
We want to get inside the head of Benjamin Franklin, perhaps the ultimate self-made man, the person who really, more than almost anyone, embodied the Age of Enlightenment in colonial America.
That's spot on. Our goal today isn't just, the greatest hits, the kite, the key, all that. We want to dig deeper, pull out the core insight, the nuggets that really explain his, frankly, staggering journey.
It really is staggering.
How does a tradesman's son methodically, almost scientifically, engineer himself into becoming world-famous scientist, a top diplomat, and a founding father? We're really tracking his evolution.
Focusing on that relentless self-improvement drive.
Yes, that's key. And also the complicated path he took from being, believe it or not, a very loyal subject of the British Crown.
Right, he started out that way.
To becoming one of its most effective revolutionary opponents. It's quite a shift.
So let's set the scene a bit. Franklin's born January 17th, 1706 in Boston. And this is a really critical moment.
Absolutely. He enters a world that's kind of reeling, still recovering from century brutal religious wars. People were getting tired of dogma. They were looking for answers you could, see and test. Rational answer.
The ground was fertile for the Enlightenment.
Exactly. You've got Gutenberg's printing press making knowledge accessible like never before. Philosophers like Locke are questioning things like the divine right of kings. Scientists like Newton are pushing discovery through observation. Empiricism.
And Franklin doesn't just live in this time. He grabs on.
He absolutely embraces new way of thinking, this faith and lodge flow of idea. And the printing, that becomes revolutionary weapon.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. His family background is pretty good. The youngest son from Josiah Franklin's second marriage to
Right, and Josiah was a candle maker.
And had a huge family, 17 children in total.
17. It sounds like, a logistical nightmare today. But it also points to this mix of backgrounds he came from.
How so?
Well, Josiah's family were these independent-minded English Protestants. Abiah's family were Flemish Protestants who'd fled religious settling in Boston way back in the 30s.
So that independent streak, that sort of anti-authoritarian vibe, was baked in from the start.
You could say it was in his DNA, yeah. And young Benjamin, he was apparently quite a handful early on.
Precocious, smart, but maybe a bit stubborn.
That's the picture we get. The sources say he was generally the leader among the boys, already showing that experimental side, combining play and, basic physics.
The swimming story. You have to tell that one.
It's a classic Franklin. He loved swimming, loved kite, and he figures out, probably around age 10 or 11, how to use a big kite like a sail while he's floating on his back. The wind just pulls him right across the pond.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
Finds the practical, efficient use of a natural force, even just for fun.
Exact. That's his mind in miniature.
But his formal schooling didn't last long. He goes to Boston Latin School at 8, does really well, shoots to the top of his class.
But Josiah pulls him out after just a year. And it wasn't only that Benjamin was maybe a bit rebellious. Josiah looked at the costs, the practicality. He felt Ben wasn't really cut out for the clergy, which was the original hope.
Because of that independent mind.
Yeah, that clever, questioning nature. So Ben gets one more year studying writing and arithmetic with a guy named George Brown. And then, bam, age 10, he's out of school completely, working in the family shop.
The Chandler's shop. And the sources make it sound like he absolutely loathed it.
Oh, intensely. You have to picture it hours spent over these boiling cauldrons of smelly, rendering animal fat, cutting wicks, mind-numbingly boring, dirty work.
You can see why he wanted out.
That physical disgust, it fueled his ambition. He actually begged his dad to let him go to sea, which was, a pretty dangerous alternative back then. But Josiah said,
probably a good thing, in hindsight. Pushed him elsewhere.
It really did. Josiah knew his son needed a trade he wouldn't despise. So he takes him on this walking tour of Boston craft.
That's fascinating. Not just sightseeing, but vocational research.
Exactly. It taught Benjamin a deep respect for skilled trades. And it gave him his first real look at the kinds of practical mechanics and skills he'd later use as an inventor and scientist.
And that tour led him to printing.
Yes. At age 12, he's apprenticed to his older brother, James, who had just come back from England and set up a print shop, a 9-year contract. This was it. This was the turning. The print shop became his university.
The self-directed university.
Completely. Because that apprenticeship, it gave him access to everything. Books, pamphlets, newspapers, and crucially, he saw powerful people coming in, commissioning government documents, currency. He saw how information flowed.
And he used that access for self-improvement immediately.
Oh, yeah. That famous story of him practicing writing by copying essays from The Spectator, that British publication.
He wouldn't just copy them, right? He'd sort of deconstruct.
Exactly. He'd read an essay, jot down notes, then try to rewrite it in his own words from memory. Then he'd compare his version to the original, looking at structure, vocabulary, flow. It was incredibly rigorous training in rhetoric.
He was teaching himself how to argue, how to persuade.
And he practiced it, too. There's an anecdote about him reading Daniel Defoe's An Essay Upon Projects and getting into a debate with a coworker about educating women.
And this is where he learns a key lesson.
A huge one. He realized that just attacking someone's position directly, it usually just makes them dig their heels in. He started learning to use subtlety, like Socrates, asking questions, guiding the other person, leading them to the conclusion you want them to reach.
A skill he'd use for the rest of his life, especially in politics.
Absolutely. Decades later, in London, in Paris, in Philadelphia, at the Constitutional Convention.
So this intense self-study leads right into his first big public splash, the Silence Do-Good letters.
Right. His brother James starts this newspaper, the New England Current, known for being pretty bold, maybe a bit rebellious, pushing boundaries.
And Benjamin, still just 16, wants in. But things with James are already a bit tense.
Yeah, James apparently wasn't shy about using physical discipline on his younger apprentice brother. So Benjamin knows James probably won't publish anything if he knows Ben wrote it.
So he comes up with this ingenious, slightly sneaky plan.
Totally audacious. He invents Silence Dogood, a fictional middle-aged widow. Kind of opinionated, maybe a little bit prim, but witty. He disguises his handwriting, slips the first essay under the print shop door, April 2nd, 1722.
And everyone loves it, including James.
They loved it. They had no idea who was writing these sharp, funny pieces. He wrote 14 of them before finally getting caught in October.
Imagine the thrill of that. Secret success. But it probably didn't help the relationship with James.
No, it likely fueled the tension. James was known to be proud, maybe a bit jealous, and then politics intervened directly.
James gets in trouble with the authorities.
Yeah, James gets jailed briefly for questioning the government's handling of piracy. Benjamin, teenager though he is, runs the paper for 3. Then James gets in hot water again, this time over an article seen as criticizing religious hypocrisy. The General Court orders James to stop publishing the Current.
So how do they get around that?
Clever loophole time. To keep the paper going, they put Benjamin's name on the masthead as the official printer.
But to do that leak,
James had to formally release Benjamin from his original 9-year indenture contract, which he did, but then apparently James immediately drew up a new secret indenture to keep control.
But Benjamin saw his chance.
He saw his chance. He's 19 now. He's tasted a bit of freedom. He's proven his writing skill with Silence Dogood. He resents James's control, probably the physical abuse too.
Well,
he sees that the public indenture is canceled.
so he just leaves.
He sells some of his precious books to get travel money, secretly books passage on a New York, and runs away. September 7. Technically, he's breaking that secret contract. It's an illegal act, but for him, it's an act of self-emancipation.
Okay, so he lands in New York, a runaway apprentice. A printer there points him towards Philadelphia, suggests he look up a guy named Samuel Keimer.
Right. And he arrives in Philly ambitious, skilled, and, probably feeling pretty good about himself. He's got this powerful drive.
That self-belief seems key. He quickly impresses people, including the governor.
Governor Sir William Keith, yeah. Keith is really taken with this bright, confident young printer. So much so that he promised to set Benjamin up shop, promises financial backing.
Which sounds great, but maybe too good to be true.
Well, Benjamin believes him. Based on this promise, he actually goes back to Boston in April 1724. He's got a letter from the governor, gets some startup cash from his father, Josiah.
How does that go down?
Josiah refuses the money. He asks the very sensible question, if the governor thinks this is such a great idea, why isn't he putting up? But Josiah is clearly proud of his son making these high-level connections.
But that trip back to Boston includes another famous encounter, the Stoop incident.
Ah, yes, with Cotton Mather, the revered, maybe slightly intimidating religious figure in Boston. Mather knew about Benjamin's reputation for, let's say, confidence, maybe arrogance.
So Mather sets him up.
Sort of. As they're walking through a narrow passageway in Mather's house, Mather suddenly calls out, "Stoop! Stoop!" Benjamin doesn't quite get it, keeps his head high, and wham, bashes his head on a low ceiling.
Ouch. And Mather delivers the lesson.
The painful practical. Let this be a caution to you not always to hold your head so high. Stoop, young man. Stoop as you go through this world, and you'll miss many hard lumps.
Advice he was about to need badly.
Prophetically, because Benjamin goes back to Philadelphia, still trusting Governor Keith. Keith tells him to sail to London to buy printing presses and type, says he'll send the letters of credit Benjamin ahead of.
So Benjamin sails in November 1724, expecting everything's arranged.
He gets to London. and realizes Mather's warning hit the nail on the head. No letters of credit, no list of supplies, nothing. Governor Keithley flaked, essentially abandoning him penniless.
That must have been absolutely devastating. A huge blow to his pride.
Crushing humiliation, and a massive practical problem. It really proved that his earlier confidence, his resolution virtue perhaps, wasn't enough. He needed humility, caution. He's forced to find work in London print shops just to survive Samuel Palmer, then John Watt.
But he doesn't just tread water in London. This is where his thinking really solidifies on some big issues, right? Religion especially.
Yeah, this period is crucial intellect. He reads a book called The Religion of Nature, delineated by William Ward.
And this clicks with him.
It really does. He comes to believe that if there is a God, the best, maybe the only truly objective way to understand that God is by studying him. Creation, science, nature, not through scripture or revelation, which could be debated.
So he moves towards deism.
Pretty much. A nominal, believes God created the universe, set up natural laws, and then sort of stepped back. But, and this is important, he still saw great value in organized religion.
Not for the theology, though.
No, more for the practical side. He saw churches as useful organizations for encouraging people to do good things, good work, for promoting morality in the community. It's a very pragmatic.
He eventually gets back to Philadelphia in July 1720 and finds a new influence.
A really positive one this time. Thomas Denham, a Quaker merchant he befriended on the voyage back. Denham becomes a sort of mentor embodying integrity in business.
There's that story about Denham and his creditors.
It's amazing. Before leaving England, Denham apparently hosted a dinner for all the people he owed money to, thanked them for their patience, and then revealed he'd place envelopes under their dinner plates containing the full amount owed. Plus,
wow, that's making a statement, doing well by doing good.
Exactly. It showed Franklin that commercial success and strong ethics could go hand in hand. Denham hires Franklin as a clerk.
And inspired by Denham, Franklin starts codifying his own rules for behavior.
Yes. He starts with 4 basic: be frugal, pay your debt, always speak the truth, work hard, and don't speak ill of it. Simple practice.
But this evolves into something much more systematic.
It absolutely does. This becomes his famous plan for attaining moral perfection. Maybe the single most influential piece of American self-help literature ever.
It's incredibly methodical.
Purely rational, almost scientific. He treats his character like a project to be engineered. He identifies 13 virtues he wants to master. He gets a little notebook, makes a chart. Each day, he tracks which virtue he failed at. Focuses on 1 virtue per week, cycling.
It's like debugging his own personality code.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Let's list those virtues: temperance, silence, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity.
And 2 others that are really telling: order and humility.
Order gave him trouble, didn't it?
He admitted it. Let all your things have their places. Let each part of your business have its time. He said this one was the hardest for him his whole life, which makes sense, right? His mind was so curious, always jumping to new ideas. Sticking to a rigid routine was tough.
And humility. That one was added later.
Yes, apparently a Quaker friend pointed out, maybe gently, that Benjamin could sometimes come across as, well, proud of his own virtues. So he added humility. And his goal for that one, explicitly, imitate Jesus and Socrates.
So Cotton Mather's stoop lesson finally sunk in deep.
It absolutely. He realized, maybe the hard way in London, that being smart wasn't enough. If you seemed arrogant about it, people wouldn't listen. You needed humility to be persuasive, especially in politics. This became central to his later diplomatic style.
Okay, so armed with this moral plan, he gets back into printing. Works for Keimer again briefly in 1727. Actually sets up the first type foundry in America there. Then starts his own shop with a partner, Hugh Meredith, in 1728.
And by October 1729, he buys out Keimer and becomes the sole owner and publisher of the Pennsylvania Gazette. He's really establishing himself.
Which leads to his Apology for Printers in 1731, a big statement on free speech.
Huge. He's drawing directly on what happened to his brother James back in Boston. He argues powerfully that printers have to be able to print diverse, even controversial opinions without necessarily endorsing them. That a free press is essential for a free society. It's a foundational argument.
But he's not just building his business, he's building civic life, too. The junto.
The Junto, or the Leather Apron Club, started around 1727 with other ambitious tradesmen like himself.
And this wasn't just a social club, was it?
Not at all. This is pure Franklin organizational genius. It was a structured group for mutual self-improvement, intellectual, moral, and civic improvement, specifically for working-class men. That was radical then. Usually these kinds of discussions were for the gentry.
And they had rules, guiding questions for their meetings.
20 questions, really practical stuff like, what new invention or improvement in the arts and sciences have you lately met with? Or, critically, have you lately observed any encroachment on the just liberties of the people?
So it's like a combination. Think tank, mutual aid society, and neighborhood watch for...
That's a great description. And this structure, this idea of pooling knowledge sources for the common good, it directly spawns major...
The Library Company of Philadelphia in 1731.
The first subscription library in America. Makes books accessible beyond the wealthy.
The Union Fire Company, the Volunteer Fire Department, 1736.
Practical Civic Act.
And later, the Academy of Philadelphia, which becomes the University of Pennsylvania.
All growing out of that Junto model. Apply rational principles, create a structure, get useful results. That's the Franklin.
We should quickly touch on his personal life here, too. He marries Deborah Reed in 1730, common law marriage.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated. Deborah had been married before, but her husband just abandoned her, left her in debt. Because they didn't know if he was dead or alive, a formal marriage for her and Benjamin could have led to bigamy charges if the first husband...
And Franklin could have been liable for the first husband's debt.
Exactly. So the common law marriage was the practical, legally safer route. He always spoke highly of her, though. Called her his good and faith help.
And around the same time, he acknowledges an illegitimate son, William Franklin.
Born probably 1730 or 31. The mother's identity isn't definitively known, but Deborah agrees to raise William in their house.
Quite something.
It really is. They later had 2 children together, Francis, or Frankie, who tragically died of smallpox at age 4, a death that haunted Benjamin because he hadn't inoculated the boy, partly due to fears about the procedure at the time. And then Sarah, known as Sally, who survived to adulthood.
So by the early 1730s, Franklin's on solid ground, financially stable, morally focused, print shop, thriving, and he becomes more than just a printer. He becomes a media mogul, really.
Absolutely. 1732, he launches Poor Richard's Almanac under the pseudonym Richard Saunders. And this thing runs for 25 years. It's a phenomenon.
Almanacs were popular, but his was different, wasn't it?
Hugely different. Yes, it had the usual stuff, weather forecasts, tide tables, but Franklin packed it with witty sayings, practical advice, and essentially doses of Enlightenment morality for the common person. It was hugely profitable, yes, but it was also social engineering through mass media.
This is where we get those classic Franklin Mac.
Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. God helps them who help themselves. A penny saved is a penny earned. Though he probably polished that last one rather than inventing it.
It's like he's merging the old Puritan work ethic with his new rational self-interest.
Precisely. He's showing ordinary people that success isn't just about luck or divine favor. It's about being industrious, frugal, orderly, applying a rational system to your life. And for him, there was zero contradiction between making money with the almanac and fulfilling his ethical duty to serve humanity full knowledge.
His public profile keeps rising, leading to government posts.
Lucrative ones, too. 1736, he becomes clerk of the Pennsylvania Assembly. Good income, plus an insider's view of how politics work. Then 1737, he's appointed postmaster of Philadelphia.
Which also paid well, but was strategically important.
Hugely strategic. By 1753, he becomes joint postmaster for all the American colonies alongside William Hunter. This effectively gives him control over the primary communication network in North America. He uses it brilliantly.
For his intellectual project, like an intercolonial junto.
Exactly that concept. In 1743, he puts out a proposal for promoting useful knowledge among the British plantations in America.
Which leads to the American Philosophical Society.
Founded in 1744 and still going strong today. His idea was simple but powerful. Use his postal net. Scientists, thinkers, inventors across the colonies could send their observations in Philadelphia.
And as a central node, and a printer.
He could compile abstracts, print them, and circulate them back out to all them. It's basically America's first national scientific journal collaborative network. Genius leverage.
By 1748, he's done so well financially that he can actually retire from the day-to-day printing business.
Yeah, he turns the operation over to his partner, David Hall, in a deal that guarantees him income for years, and he decides to focus on his real passions, what he called his scientific amusements.
And he approaches science with that same ethical code.
Completely. That virtue of humility. His goal in science was always, he very deliberately avoided taking out patents on most inventors. He believed discoveries should benefit everyone. Knowledge was for the common.
Which brings us to electricity, his most famous scientific work.
It started in 1743. He saw a demonstration by a traveling lecturer, Dr. Archibald Spencer. Spencer did tricks with static electricity, rubbing a glass tube. Franklin was hooked.
He starts experimenting seriously around 1747.
Yeah, he orders equipment from London through Peter Collinson, a contact from the Royal Society, and his first big conceptual breakthrough is realizing electricity isn't created by rubbing things together, it's transferred.
Which leads to the idea of positive and negative charge.
He's the first to theorize that and coin those terms He figures out it's a single fluid, and an excess is positive, a deficit is negative. He also discovers that sharp points draw off electrical charge much more effectively than blunt objects, a key finding.
Then he works with Leyden jar path.
Right. Everyone thought the electrical charge was stored inside the jar, in the water or metal foil. Franklin does these careful experiments, taking the jars apart while charged, testing the components, and proves it's actually the glass itself, the insulate, stores the charge, the dielectric.
A fundamental discovery about how capacitors work.
Absolutely. And based on that, he builds the first electric battery, not a chemical battery like we think, but stacking panes of glass edged with metal foil, wiring them in parallel. He could store and discharge a significant jolt.
And then he makes the connection to lightning.
In 1749, he writes down 12 ways that electrical sparks are similar: scale, color, sound, smell, ability to kill animals, melt metal. He forms the hypothesis. Lightning is just a massive electrical discharge.
He sends this idea to Collinson in London.
It gets published in the Gentleman's Magazine in 1750, and it causes a huge stir in the society across.
Famously tested first in France.
May 1752. Scientists in Marly-la-Ville, near Paris, successfully draw electricity from thunderclouds using a tall metal rod, proving Franklin's theory. Even before King Louis V, Franklin confirms it himself shortly after with his famous kite and key experiment in Philadelphia.
Which wasn't about getting struck by lightning, thankfully.
No, that would have been fatal. It was about showing that the kite string collected ambient electrical charge from the storm cloud, which could then be drawn off as a spark from the key tied.
And the practical application.
The lightning rod, a pointed metal rod connected to the ground, still protecting buildings today. This work wins him the Royal Society's prestigious Copley Medal in gold in 1750, the first person outside Britain to get it. Honorary degrees from Harvard and Yale fall. The tradesman is now officially Dr. Frank.
And his inventiveness just keeps going. The Franklin stove for better heating in 1741.
Though he didn't patent it, so others modified and profited.
The flexible urinary catheter in 1752 for his brother who suffered from kidney stones.
Practical empathy driving invention.
The glass harmonica, that musical instrument, into 1762. Bifocals later in 1785.
And even mapping the Gulf Stream during his Atlantic voyages, realizing it could speed up trip. Or redesigning Philadelphia's street lamps, putting vents in so that it didn't suit up. Using 4 panes of glass so if one broke, it was easy and cheap to repair.
Applying that rational problem-solving mind to everything, big and small.
Exactly. Always asking, how can this be more efficient, more useful?
Okay, so Franklin's hitting his stride scientifically, becoming world famous. But at the same exact time, political tensions are ramping up in the colonies, especially in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, the French and Indian Wars are starting and stopping King George's War, then the 7 Years' War. Frontier security is a huge issue, and Pennsylvania has this unique structural problem.
The conflict between the Assembly and the proprietors, the Penn family.
Exactly. The Assembly, representing the colonists, wants to fund defense men. But you have 2 obstacles. One, significant Quaker population pacifist on principle, reluctant to approve military spending.
And 2, the big one. The proprietor, Thomas Penn, who owned vast tracts of land, refused to allow his lands to be taxed by the Assembly to pay for defense.
Right. He insisted his lands were exempt. So the burden falls entirely on the colony, while the guy with the most land to protect contributes nothing through tax. It breeds huge resentment.
Franklin steps right into this mess in 1747.
During King George's War, yeah. With the Assembly deadlocked and the proprietor unwilling, Franklin publishes a pamphlet called Plain Truth, and he proposes something pretty radical.
An independent militia.
Entirely independent of the colonial government. A voluntary association. Democratically run, officers elected by the men, no class, funded by themselves through things like a lottery, which Franklin organized to buy cannons.
What's the deeper impact of this?
It's huge. Analytically, this is the key nugget. It taught Pennsylvanians, and by extension other Americans, that they could organize themselves, solve their own problem, provide for their own defense without relying on the established colonial government or, importantly, the British Crown. It fostered
Learned directly from the Junto model.
Exactly. And it also made Thomas Penn his permanent powerful enemy. Penn saw this independent militia as a direct challenge to his authority.
This idea of colonial self-reliance comes up again at the Albany Conference in 1754.
Right. Franklin is sent as a commissioner. The official purpose is to coordinate defense with other colonies and secure an alliance with the Iroquois Confederacy against the French. But Franklin comes prepared with something much bigger.
The Albany Plan of Union, his first sketch of a unified colonial government.
And it's remarkably far-sighted. It proposed a Grand Council, basically a colonial congress, with representatives from each colony. Crucially, representation would be proportioned based on population and wealth, not one colony, one.
Very forward-thinking. Overseen by a president general appointed by the king.
Yeah, he wasn't thinking independence yet. This was about efficient imperial administration and defense. He published the plan alongside that famous cartoon.
The Join or Die snake, cut into pieces representing the colonies, one of the first political cartoons in America.
Powerful image. But The plan gets shot down.
Why? Seems logical.
It failed because the individual colonial governments were jealous of their own power. They weren't ready to give up authority to some central colonial body, even for mutual defense. The British government wasn't keen on a unified colonial bloc either.
So Franklin learned a hard lesson there about intercolonial unity, or the lack of it.
A very hard lesson. It showed just how much the colonies thought of themselves as separate and not one unified America. Parochial interest won out.
Then comes the Braddock disaster during the 7 years. This really highlights the proprietor.
Oh, brutal. British General Braddock arrives, needs wagons and supplies for his expedition against the French. The local farmers. Franklin, ever the civic leader, steps in, personally guarantees payment to the farmers, putting up his own bond to secure the...
Taking a huge personal financial
math. And then Braddock marches off into the wilderness, gets ambushed, disastrously defeated and killed. Franklin is suddenly on the hook for a fortune he doesn't have. He's nearly ruined financially until another British general, William Shirley, steps in and covers the debt.
And while Franklin's risking everything, what's proprietor Thomas Penn doing?
Haughtily refusing, yet again, to allow the assembly to tax his lands to fund the war effort. He eventually offers a small voluntary contribution, like a gift, not an obligation. £5,000, peanuts, compared to the need.
This must have infuriated Franklin.
Absolutely solidified his opposition. It's during this period, arguing against the assembly giving in to the proprietor's demands in exchange for meager funds, that Franklin writes that incredibly famous line. Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Aims squarely at Penn and his allies.
So the assembly decides they need to take the fight directly to the proprietors in London.
Yes, they elect Franklin colonel of the militia he helped resurrect, but he resigns, seeing the political danger. Instead, they send him to London in June 1757 as the assembly. His mission, persuade the Penns to allow taxation, or failing that, appeal to the British government to intervene, maybe even revoke the Penn Charter.
This is his first long stint in London. Wow, almost 6.
And it's a real eye-opener for him. On one hand, he loves it. He connects with the top scientific and intellectual minds, Dr. John Fothergill, Sir John Pringle, Joseph Priestley, who discovered oxygen. He joins clubs like the Royal Society, the Honest Whigs. He's celebrated.
But politically?
Politically, it's a cold dose of reality. He arrives still thinking of the colonies in Britain as partners in a grand empire. He quickly realizes that many powerful figures in the British government, like Lord Grenville, who would later champion the Stamp Act, see the colonies very differently.
As sources of revenue.
Subordinates.
As vassals, Franklin put. Their main purpose was to obey British directives and contribute to the wealth of the mother country, not as partners with equal right. His meeting with the Penns themselves must have gone well.
January 1758. Predictably explosive. It achieved nothing and ended any hope of persuading them directly. So Franklin shifts his whole strategy.
To what?
He starts working behind the scenes to have the Penn's proprietary charter revoked entirely, to turn Pennsylvania into a royal colony directly under the king's control. He figures the king's government has to be more reasonable than the selfish Penn. A risky gamble, urged on by his allies back home.
While he's doing this politicking, he's also soaking up European culture.
Traveling widely, meets Adam Smith in Scotland, David Hume. He's solidifying his reputation as this transatlantic man of letters and science. He gets that honorary doctorate at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. That's when he really becomes known as Dr.
And just before he heads home in 1762, he pulls off something for his son.
Uses his influence and connections. He secures the appointment of his illegitimate son, William, as the royal governor, of a huge step up.
And in a strange family.
Benjamin agrees to take in and raise William's own illegitimate son, William Temple Franklin. So grandfather Benjamin is raising his grandson Temple, while his son William goes off to be a royal governor. Those complicated family dynamics are going to explode.
Franklin gets back home, but the peace doesn't last long. He walks right back into conflict. The Paxton Boys.
Yeah, this was ugly. A mob of frontiersmen out west, the Paxton Boys, massacre a group of peaceful, Christianized Native Americans living under government protection. Then they march towards Philadelphia, threatening more violence.
And Franklin is horrified.
Absolutely appalled. Not just by the massacre, but by the government's weak response. They failed to protect the Native Americans, failed to hold the mob accountable. Some officials were even offering bound scalps. It was a moral outrage.
And it ties back to the proprietor issue.
Directly. He sees it as another failure of the proprietary government to maintain order and justice. It convinces him more than ever that Pennsylvania needs to become a royal colony. He writes powerful resolutions in March 1764 calling for just that.
And the assembly agrees.
They do. The fight isn't over, so they sent him back to England in November 1704. His mission now is explicitly to lobby for the end of the proprietorship and maybe just maybe, explore the idea of getting the colony's representation in Parliament itself.
He arrives back in London, completely unaware of the storm that's about to break.
The Stamp Act. Parliament passes it in March 1765, imposing a direct tax on the colonies for printed material. Franklin, still trying to navigate as a loyal British subject who wants reform, makes a huge political blunder.
As you.
He thinks the act is inevitable, so he tries to make the best of it by recommending his friend John Hughes back in Pennsylvania for the job of stamp distributor, trying to put a familiar face on an unpopular policy.
Which backfires spectacularly.
Catastrophically. News hits Pennsylvania and riots erupt. Mobs threaten Hughes. They even threaten Franklin's own house in Philadelphia where Deborah and Sally are living. It's a terrifying wake-up call for him. He completely misread the depth of colonial anger. That stoop lesson again.
This crisis really shifts things, doesn't it? Starts to solidify an American identity separate from Britain.
Franklin quickly pivots. He testifies brilliantly before Parliament in February 1766. He gives this masterful, calm, reasoned explanation of why the colonists object to internal taxes imposed by Parliament without their consent, while still accepting Parliament's right to regulate trade external taxes.
And his testimony helps get the Stamp Act repealed.
It's a major factor. He becomes the go-to guy, the agent for 4 colonies, now Pennsylvania, Georgia, New Jersey, Massachusetts. He's at the height of his influence as a colonial agent.
But the calm doesn't last. The Townshend Acts come in 1767.
More taxes, this time on imported goods like glass, lead, paper, tea. And Franklin is caught in the middle again. He tries to find a compromise, hold colonial rights while maintaining loyalty to the empire.
And this balancing act satisfies no one.
Nobody. Back home, increasingly radical voices see him as too compromising, too much of a loyalist. In London, the government hardliners see him as too American, stirring up trouble. His petition to end the proprietorship gets its final rejection. He's losing ground on all fronts.
Things get really tense after the Boston Massacre in 1770. Franklin resorts to his old weapon, satire.
Yeah, by 1773, he's trying to use wit to expose the absurdity and injustice of British policies, hoping to maybe shock them into...
He writes, rules by which a great empire may be reduced to a small.
Brilliant satire. Just lays out step by step how to alienate your colonies through arrogance and oppression. Things like assume they're suspicious, send ignorant governors, garrison troops among them, tax them heavily.
He says if they complain, ensure long delay, enormous expense, and a final judgment in favor of the oppressor. Scathing.
And then an edict by the King of Prussia. Pure genius. He pretends to be the King of Prussia, claiming Britain owes him taxes because Angles and Saxons originally emigrated from German land. It perfectly mirrors the British rationale for taxing America, exposing its absurdity.
But satire isn't enough. The Boston Tea Party happens in December 1773, and then comes Franklin's lowest.
The Cockpit Trial. January 1774. The British government discovers Franklin was the one who obtained and secretly sent back to Mass some private letters written by Governor Thomas Hutchinson, letters that revealed Hutchinson's contempt for colonial liberties and urged repression.
So they haul Franklin before the Privy Council.
In a room called the Cockpit at Whitehall. It's not a trial, it's a ritual humiliation. He's forced to stand silently for over an hour while the Solicitor General, Alexander Wedderburn, launches this vicious, personal, insulting verbal attack on him in front of the entire assembled British establishment.
Accusing him of theft, dishonor, stripping him bare publicly.
It was brutal. Calculated act to destroy his reputation, and very next day, they fired him from his position as Joint Postmaster General for the colony, adding financial injury to the profound personal...
This must have been the absolute break.
Absolutely. That, combined with the news that his wife Deborah had died back in Philadelphia while he was enduring all this, there was no going back. He made some last-ditch secret efforts to negotiate pathetic figures like Chad, but it was hopeless.
The first shots of the revolution are fired at Lexington and Concord in April 1775. Franklin is already on a ship heading.
He lands in Philadelphia in early May. The very next day, he's chosen as a delegate Second Continental Congress. The transformation is he walks in no longer an agent trying to reconcile, but as ardent, fully committed.
But there's one painful piece of personal business for his son.
The royal governor of New Jersey. They have one last bitter. Benjamin pleads with William to join the patriot cause. William refuses, insists on neutrality or loyalty to the crown. They choose opposite sides. The break is absolute, permanent. Father against son. Tragic.
In Congress, Franklin is immediately pushing for independence.
He knows reconciliation is impossible now. He dismisses the Olive Branch petition as futile. He actually dusts off his old 1754 Albany plan and revises it into a proposed framework for a new American government. Articles of Confederation showing that crucial division of powers between a federal government and state.
He's incredibly active. John Adams noted how energetic.
Yeah, Yeah, Adams wrote that Franklin does not hesitate at our boldest measures, but rather seems to think us too irresolute. Franklin's involved in every setting up gunpowder manufacturing, negotiating with Native American tribes, promoting foreign trade.
And then he's appointed to the Committee of Five to draft the Declaration of Independence.
Meets at his house, though Jefferson does most of the writing. Franklin offers a few crucial, simplifying edits, smoothing the language.
Since independence is declared, the crucial need is foreign help. France.
And who better to send than the most famous American in the world? Congress sends him to France, along with Silas Deane, who later gets into trouble, and the notoriously difficult, paranoid Arthur.
Franklin's strategy in France is pure performance art.
It's brilliant diplomacy. He knows he can't compete with the French courtiers in terms of fashion or aristocratic bearing, so he leans into his reputation. He plays the part of the wise, simple, colonial rustic.
The plain clothes, the fur cap.
That famous Martin fur cap. It becomes his trademark. He presents himself as the embodiment of New World natural virtue and scientific genius, contrasting sharply with the elaborate artifice of the French court at Versailles. And the French love it. He becomes a sensation.
He's charming the salons, the scientists, and crucially the Comte de Vergennes, the foreign minister.
It takes time, skill, and patience. He's dealing with gout, internal squabbles within the American delegation. Lee constantly suspecting everyone, including Franklin, of treachery. They even discover their own secretary, Edward Bancroft, is secretly a British spy the whole time.
Unbelievable pressure.
But he persists.
He does. The American victory at Saratoga in 1777 helps convince the French the cause is viable. By February 1778, Franklin secures the vital treaties of alliance and commerce. France is officially in the war on America's side, a massive diplomatic triumph.
He becomes the sole minister plenipotentiary in 1779 and plays a key role even after Yorktown seals the military.
Yeah, even though he's often ill, he's central to the peace negotiation, working behind the scenes, smoothing ruffled feathers.
He signs the preliminary peace treaty in November 1780 and the final Treaty of Paris, officially ending September 3rd.
And even then, his diplomatic skill is needed. Vergennes felt the Americans had sidelined the French in the final negotiation. Franklin manages to soothe things over, securing one last loan from France. Masterful reconciliation, right? So, peace is achieved. The war is won. Franklin returns home a hero in 1785, but the country he returns to is unstable.
Deeply unstable. The Articles of Confederation, the government he helped sketch out years earlier, just aren't. There's no strong central authority. You basically have 13 independent little countries, loosely allied, with a Congress that can't effectively tax or enforce laws.
The states are squabbling. The economy's a mess.
Exactly. And then comes Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts in 1786. Farmers protesting debt and tax. The weak national government can barely respond. It highlights for everyone just how fragile it's the cattle.
Leading to the call for a constitutional convention in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787.
Right. To revise the Articles, though it quickly becomes clear they need a whole new system. And Franklin, now 81 years old, frail, suffering from gout and kidney stones, is there as a delegate from Pennsylvania.
Presence alone must have carried him.
Immense moral authority. He's the elder statesman, the only person there who had signed the Declaration, the Treaty of Alliance with France, the Treaty of Paris, and now would sign the Constitution. He connects all the phases of the revolution.
What was his role during the debates? He wasn't giving long speeches, was he?
No, he spoke rarely, often had others read his speeches for him because of his health, but his role was crucial. He was the Enlightenment sage in the room. He used his immense prestige, his humor, his patience, and that Socratic method he'd honed decades to gently guide the often heated debate.
Pushing for compromise.
Always pushing for compromise, reminding the delegates of the need for humility, for give and take. He helped break deadlocks, often with a well-timed anecdote or proposal, like his suggestion for the compromise on representation that led to the House structure.
One historian captured it perfectly, saying that for Franklin, compromise was not only a practical approach, but a moral. Tolerance, humility, and respect for others required it. He's living that 13th virtue on the national stage.
Absolutely. He's applying his personal moral code to the act of nation building.
And his final speech urging adoption of the Constitution, even with its flaws, is so pragmatic.
Classic Frank. Thus, I consent, sir, to this Constitution because I expect no better and because I am not sure that it is not the best. No illusions of perfection, just the best possible outcome achieved through reasoned compromise.
Even after the convention, crippled by illness, he doesn't stop work. He takes on one last great cause.
The abolition of slavery. It had clearly troubled him for years, despite having owned slaves earlier in his life, which we have to acknowledge. But in his final years, he sees it as the great moral contradiction of the nation he helped create.
He becomes president of the Pennsylvania Society for promoting the abolition of slavery in 1787.
Applying that same civic improvement energy he'd always had. His final major political act was sending an abolition petition, signed by him, to the very first Congress under the new Constitution, February 1790.
Just weeks before he died?
Yes, Benjamin Franklin passed away on April 17th, 1790.
And the public reaction was enormous.
Huge outpouring of grief and respect. Over 20,000 people reportedly lined the streets of Philadelphia for his funeral procession, a massive number for the time.
And the most symbolic detail of that.
Just incredibly fitting. Clergy from every single religious denomination in Philadelphia walked together at the front of his cap, representing his lifelong commitment to religious tolerance, his focus on shared good works over doctrinal differences. It perfectly symbolized the civic harmony he strove.
It really was a life built on engineering electrical understanding, engineering political compromises, and most fundamentally, engineering his own character.
That's the thread that runs through it all.
So, wrapping this deep dive up, what are the big takeaways about this man who really did personify the American Enlightenment?
Well, the sheer breadth is astonishing. From Silence Dogood's wit to the lightning rod spark, from the collaborative junto to the compromising sage at the Constitution's birth. And it all seems to flow from that relentless, methodical plan for self-improvement he started as a young man. His moral philosophy wasn't just abstract. It was the blueprint for his practical success.
Which leads us to maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener.
Franklin's incredible success, especially politically, clearly depended on his willingness to compromise, to be tolerant, often swallowing his own pride. Think of the cockpit ordeal or sacrificing personal ties, like the devastating break with his son William.
So the question is, if Frank, the embodiment of the Enlightenment, often had to prioritize that virtue of humility and the necessity of compromise over perhaps his equally cherished virtue of resolution, of sticking firmly to a principle, what does that tell? Does achieving great lasting change, like a revolution or founding a nation, sometimes require a certain moral flexibility, a willingness to bend on some principles to achieve a greater, perhaps imperfect good? Something to think about as you consider the legacy man. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.